I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. Ooh. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, but you only.
What's going on, guys? Jake Ham back with another video, and today I'm going to be giving you my reactions and some of the biggest things and going over a lot of the big signings from NFL free agency of day one that has happened today. But before we get into it, please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agreed or disagreed with that I talk about in here, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content I'm going to be putting out, whether it's NFL free agency, whether it's the draft coming up, pro days, all that good stuff. Make sure to subscribe to keep up with all of it. So free agency day one has been wild. There's been some pretty crazy trades. There have been some pretty crazy signings that have gone on, and a lot more money. I feel like a lot of people have been getting overpaid in this free agency. But sometimes when you're a bad team and you got the most cap money, to be able to get a player, you're gonna have to overpay them and be able to throw a lot of money at them to be able to get that player that you want. So starting out here with the most recent one that just happened. The Broncos just signed former 49ers linebacker Dre Greenlaw, and I think this is a huge sign for the Broncos. The Broncos were a sneaky good defense last year with a lot of guys that most people didn't really know about and didn't really expect. And in free agency they came out and they've signed two big guys. Obviously from the 49ers, they came out and they signed Dre Greenlaw just this most recently. It was going to be a big impact for him to be able to play linebacker and come in for. And then another guy that's going to be able to come in and play safety for him is Tolino Hufunga from the 49ers as well, who's a great safety for them. And both of these guys are really going to be able to come in for the Denver Broncos and make a huge impact and really help build up that defense. I think that this is kind of what their idea was for the Broncos. They were going to attack defense and free agency and kind of build up that defense. And then in the draft, they're going to build up and attack offense and be able to get more weapons for Bo Nix. Whether it's the running back they just lost, Javonte Williams, he's just went to Dallas. So I think that they're going to look to either draft a wide receiver, tight end, or a running back, or all three in the first couple of rounds. And they're going to look to be able to upgrade the offense for the draft and be able to keep up with the defense and free agency. So moving on, looking through here at a couple of the other ones, as I talked about Javonte Williams, the Cowboys haven't made any big splashes in years. They haven't signed anybody in free agency and paid big money since like 2016. And here it looks like that they're seeming that they're going to let Rico Dow walk after having 1,000 yard season. He hasn't signed with anybody yet. And it looks like that they're going to be going with Javonte Williams. I think he's going to be a veteran kind of committee guy that's going to be able to be a rotational piece in there. And I think mostly they're going to be looking for somebody in the draft. I don't think that they're going to use it with the 12th pick in the first round to be able to draft a running back. I don't think they're going to go look at Amarion Hampton or Genty or anybody like that in the 12th. But I think that they're going to wait until the second or third round to be able to come up and be able to draft a running back to be able to fill that slot, mate. Whether it's a Caleb Johnson and Quinshon Judkins, I feel like would be a good fit there. Travion Henderson, maybe in the early part of the second, maybe I have to move up to be able to get him. But I think that they're going to wait for that second, third round area. And I think that this shows it by them letting Rico Dow go and they're bringing more of a veteran presence to be able to be a more rotational beast. Secondly, the Patriots obviously have been very active as we expected with them having the most cap space in the NFL by a mile. And when you have all that money, you got to sign some people. And here you see the Bills ended up signing Joshua Palmer to a big deal. And when they go and sign Joshua Palmer to $12 million per year for 3 seasons, they have to go and they end up replacing and getting who the Bills had in Mack Hollins. Mack Hollins had a great year for the Bills, and I think that's what they're hoping. He's kind of reunited with Josh McDaniels, who's with before, and Mack Hollins, I think, would have a fit. They just need to get more weapons for Drake May. They haven't really done that. They focused more defensively so far in this free agency. But there's still a lot of receivers out there that they could still throw some money at, like Stephon Diggs and some other people like that they potentially could be able to get in there for Drake May. But Mack Hollins is a good start for him, even though they've been more, and we're going to look at some more in this free agency that they've been doing throughout this as they've been looking to add more of defensive players through free agency. Another one that just happened about an hour ago, the Vikings ended up getting a 2-year deal with Ron Kelly. Ron Kelly has been one of the better centers in the NFL for the last couple of years. He kind of fell off last year. He's kind of getting a little bit older, and he was one of the longest tenured Colts on the team. Obviously, they let him walk. They're looking. They might end up attacking that and the draft and looking for maybe like a Jared Wilson in the second round, somebody around then to replace Ron Kelly. But the Vikings, this is a need that they absolutely had to get because with the free agency, their interior offensive line was one of the worst in the NFL, and we seen it in the playoffs where they ended up going up against the Rams. Most of the sacks that they were giving up were from the interior of the offensive line, and Sam Darnold was able to get sacked tons of times throughout that playoffs. And everybody's been saying it time and time again. The Vikings, if they want to be competitive and want to be able to compete, they have to upgrade the interior offensive line, as along with a couple things in the secondary on defense. But mainly, the interior offensive line needs to be helped. Some people thought maybe it would be in the draft, maybe a Gray Zabel, but I don't know if Gray Zabel is going to be there now. He's risen up the board so much. So I think it's more of them coming out and signing Ryan Kelly to be able to help that interior and be able to play center is definitely going to help them out on the interior that they definitely needed. That was obviously a clear need in the playoffs. Another thing to talk about here is the Rams looking to end up cutting Cooper Kupp. As of right now, it seems like that they're going to end up releasing him and letting him go. They have not, unless they're able to find a trade partner, they haven't really found one. The reason nobody really wants to trade for him, some people think maybe, you got this talented guy, why not shore him up and be able to go out and get him and maybe just send like a sixth, seventh, but his contract's so expensive, you don't want to be able to eat all that money, so you wait for him to be able to be released, and then you can sign him for cheaper once he's released because he has all the guaranteed money to himself. So a lot of teams are going to end up releasing him. I think that Cooper Kupp's going to end up going to a contender. I don't know who it would be off the top of my head, but I think that he ends up waiting and he ends up going to a team that's able to contend right now. Maybe a Bills could be a good spot for him, something like that. But a team that's able in there, maybe a Ravens and the AFC. I think there's going to be a lot of people competing for him to be able to sign him once he's actually officially released. Then we have Tre'Davious Ward to the Colts. This is a big one for the Colts. The San Francisco 49ers secondary has and defense has kind of been, rummaged through. A lot of their guys have been able to get big deals with other teams, and the Colts have gone through and gotten Tre'Davious Ward. It's a 3-year contract, it's kind of a bigger deal. 35 million guaranteed, 60 million over that 3 years. And Tre'Davious Ward is an upgrade that the Colts needed. Their secondary was awful. They definitely do need safety and corners. A lot of people were looking at maybe a Malachi Starks in the draft for him, but they're looking here to upgrade a corner at this point, and I think that they're also going to need to be able to upgrade that tight end slot. Let's see if they end up going after an Evan Ingram, or maybe they're trying to make a move and go with the Colson Love one in the draft. But Tre'Davious Ward definitely upgrades their corner position that they needed. They obviously didn't have a lot at that point, and it's kind of an issue for them because their secondary was god awful, and they needed to go through and sign a couple guys at that point for the Colts. And then moving on to the big one of the day, he was considered one of the top free agents was Sam Darnold to the Seattle Seahawks. He ended up getting a 3-year deal, $100 million. So he's getting about $33 million a year. He's getting about what Baker is getting currently, and he was seen as one of the top free agents. We all kind of expected that he was going to go to the Seahawks after they traded Geno, because once they traded Geno Smith, it was kind of expected that they weren't going to move on from Geno Smith unless they knew or had very good insight that they were going to end up being able to get one of these free agent quarterbacks. And it was always kind of pointing to Sam Darnold. And pretty much they're just getting younger at the position. Geno Smith, they would probably have. It's kind of a risk for Seattle because can Sam Darnold be able to put together back-to-back efficient seasons like he did with the Vikings? And Geno Smith's 34 years old. Sam Darnold has all the experience, and he's 27 years old. So you're kind of just getting younger. You're getting that 3-year plan in place as the Seahawks are going to be going through kind of like a mild rebuild for the next couple of years during this time. And with him getting 33 mil, it's not too bad. It's kind of like middle of the road quarterback pay. You're kind of banking on him being able to be consistent throughout those next couple of years, but it's something that Seattle needs. I do think I could see them bringing in a middle round rookie guy in the draft. If a Jackson Dart's there in the second round, somebody could come in and back up to him for a year or two. Maybe a Jalen Milroe could come in there, wait for a year or two, and then wait for Sam Darnold to see how he does, and then come in instead for him. But I do think that they're mainly going to be focused on trying to help out Sam Darnold, help out the interior. I'm very surprised that they haven't signed Josh Myers yet, somebody like that. I think we all knew that Drew Dalman was going to be going to the Bears. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think that we were kind of expecting Seahawks to be able to go for an interior piece, and with them not signing any interior offensive lineman yet, kind of like the Vikings needed to. It's kind of that same situation where both their interior offensive lines aren't very good. So is he going to struggle again with that since the Vikings had a lot of struggles with it as well? And it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they deal with it and how they go with it moving forward. A lot of people have had Gray Zabel getting mocked to the Seahawks at 18. And I think that's the most moderate spot that he would go to kind of help out. He could go there and play center or guard. And if they end up signing Josh Myers from the Packers, he kind of struggled last year. So if they sign him, Zabel can end up playing guard. And if Myers struggles, they can move Gray Zabel over. But I think that him getting 33 million is definitely an interesting spot for a lot of teams, um, with how they've been able to do that. The second quarterback that ended up coming off the board was the Jets. They ended up reaching a 2-year $40 million deal. It ends up getting him $20 million a year with Justin Fields. And it over the last couple days and the last week, there had been a lot of smoke screens that the Jets were very interested in Justin Fields. Was he just using this to try to get more leverage from the Steelers? But I think that obviously both sides are very interested in one another. I think it eventually just came down to the Steelers just would not commit to Justin Fields being their number one quarterback. And $20 million a year, that's a little bit a lot, but you're signing him to be your starter for the next 2 years. And if you're looking at it, $20 million is very cheap for a starting quarterback. Now, it really just depends if he's going to be able to put that together for a full season. If you look at that 6 game stretch that Justin Fields had as the Steelers starting quarterback before Russ came back, he really had 10 touchdowns, 5 rushing, 5 passing to 1 interception, and his completion percentage was up from, years past. But, is that the Steelers? I know the Steelers have struggled offensively the last couple of years, but, it's the Steelers system. So is that him stepping into it to be able to go in and just produce and not be asked to do too much? I think that if the Jets want to succeed with this move with Justin Fields, it's going to have to be similar. They're going to have to get a lot of weapons and pretty much get that running game going. I think that's going to be the big focus for them as Aaron Glenn's coming from the Detroit Lions system. They're going to be looking to run the ball. And I know he was defensive, but I think he's going to be taking a place out of that. They're going to try to get a dominant offense line. They already have Brees Hall, and they're just going to try to run the ball and make sure that Justin Fields isn't able to make a lot of the mistakes, and he's able to just kind of control the ball and just don't turn it over. And along with adding him to the run game, I think it could potentially work as long as he's able just to not turn the ball over, and they're able to get that dominant run game going. But this kind of raises more questions for the Steelers since they didn't really want to commit to Justin Fields and anybody else in there. Are they going to? A lot of the rumors is that they're going to be going after Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is kind of the big rumor right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are they going to be able to go after Russell Wilson? It's just a lot of the dominoes that need to fall in the quarterback market since Justin Fields went to the Jets. The Steelers might end up bringing Aaron Rodgers. Darnold going to the Seahawks. This might leave the Giants, who were interested in Rodgers, to end up having to get Russell Wilson because there's no other quarterbacks left on the market. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see if the Giants go out and get a quarterback here, because then that's going to affect the NFL draft. Because maybe if they get Russell Wilson, their plans to win now. So they're expecting that Shador and Cam Ward are both going to be off the clock. So there's a couple guys like that that's definitely going to be going down with a lot of these. But that's kind of the main focus with some of them as well. Okay, so moving on to some of the stuff that happened, one of the big trades that ended up going on in day one of free agency was the Commanders actually trading for Laremy Tunsil from the Houston Texans, and I thought this was pretty shocking because I would think that if Laremy Tunsil was being traded, especially with a team later in the first round like the Commanders, I thought the Commanders would at least needed to give up a first round pick, but they're actually able to give up a lot of mid round picks and second round picks. So in this, the Commanders obviously ended up getting Laremy Tunsil, but they also ended up getting a fourth round pick, while the Commanders are giving them a second and fourth in next year's draft, and they're giving them uh, they're giving them a third and a seventh in this year's draft, and a second and a fourth in next year's draft, and that's really the big part of it. I was very shocked that they didn't have to give up their first round pick at pick 28, especially for Laremy Tunsil. Laremy Tunsil, even though he kind of struggled this past year, he didn't do as good as what he usually was. He was very high level tackle that a lot of teams would need. And the Commanders are definitely going out and making moves to try to be able to set up Jaden Daniels to the best possible ability to be able to succeed and build upon what he did in his rookie year. And even though Laremy Tunsil did struggle last year, he's still been a high productive and been one of the best tackles in football for the last couple of years. Especially with that contract that he was given a couple of years ago by the Texans, you could tell at that point he was the best left tackle in football. And it's just something that you can tell that the Commanders are definitely going out to do. They're trying to go out and help out Jaden Daniels, and I think that's a big part of it. That they're just trying to set up Jaden Daniels up to be able to build on his, and that's how you do. You go out and you get him a dominant left tackle for an O line that was considered shaky for a little bit. And then another one that was shocking at the beginning of the day, we seen that Grady Jarrett was going to be able to be released from the Atlanta Falcons. And then just a couple hours later, it was told that he was signing with the Bears. The Bears were big spenders and were seen as one of the biggest winners from day one of free agency. They've done a lot throughout the offseason. They went and signed and traded for Jonah Jackson. They went and traded for Joe Thuney. And those were two of the bigger trades to be able to increase the interior of the offensive line. They ended up going and getting Dalman, and they've upgraded their defense line as well. They went and signed Grady Jarrett for a 3-year, $43 million deal. The Falcons, he was pretty much just a cap casualty. They ended up having to be able to save money somewhere, and instead of just going and being able to release and to be able to sign some of their young offensive guys, they have to go and release a defensive guy that's a little bit older, and that's Grady Jarrett that they end up doing, who still has high production in his future for the Falcons. So the Bears going out and they're pretty much just upgrading their defensive line there with the interior. And that's something they're just trying to get better in the trenches, really. And as you can see here, they ended up signing Deo from the Colts defense end, who's a younger guy that has very high upside and really hasn't had a whole lot of production in his days, but he's definitely been able to come out and have, that upside for a team that he could end up being a 8-9 sacks a year guy that could be very useful for the Bears. And then another one, the Panthers were expected to be big spenders, and they came out and they did the same thing with Trayvon Merrick. Trayvon Merrick, this is kind of a big deal for him. 3 year, 51 million. Like I've said, a lot of these guys kind of overpaid, but the Panthers just needed more talent on defense. Their defense cost them a lot of games later in the year. Once Bryce Young and the offense kind of got clicking, they just couldn't get a stop, and they go and they get one of the best. Trayvon Merrick was coming off one of his best years, and he's a former second round pick for the Raiders, and he's only 25 years old. And with him coming off one of his best years, he comes out and gets a payday and to pretty much go and upgrade that Panthers. And it was supposed to be the second guy that was ending up being able to help out that Panthers defense, but we'll get to that in a minute. The Cardinals also go out and get one of the top edge rushers in this free agency class with Josh Sweat. This is actually one that I predicted. So if you haven't seen that, please go and watch my predictions video for day one. But Josh Sweat got big money. He goes to a guy that he was coached by a couple of years ago, and Jonathan Gannon, who was defensive coordinator for the Eagles. And this is something that's expected with that connection and with them needing more of an edge presence and a better defensive line. And he's just going back to old coach they knows. They're familiar with each other, so it makes sense to be able to go back and have that connection with one another. And we talked about Fuaga, talked about Fields a little bit to be able to go in there and be able to get that deal done. And this is one of the last ones I want to talk about was Milton Williams. Milton Williams was supposed to be able to sign with the Panthers originally. What was given out was that he was signing with the Panthers. They were giving him a big payday, but after about an hour later, it came out that that deal wasn't necessarily done, and the Patriots actually swooped in with them having the most money in free agency and the most cap space in free agency, and gave Milton Williams a ton of money to be able to come to him. And it's very interesting what the Patriots are doing because they definitely have gone a lot of defense, like I said earlier, in this free agency. So that makes you start to think, are they going to lean on the offensive side of the ball with the NFL draft pick? And they haven't added much weapons, but with them focused on defense, I think it's them expecting and knowing that they're not going to get a Bill Carter maybe, or maybe they're leaving the slot because they went and they've signed Harold Landry at one edge spot. They signed Milton Williams. They still have Christian Barmore, and they're still looking for another edge rusher. So they could potentially end up getting Abdul Carter and try to get that dominant defense line to be able to step in right away and be able to complete that. But taking them away from Carolina was a big part of it. It was originally broken out that he was signing with the Panthers, and they come in and offer him a ton of money and take him away to be able to get that interior presence on that defensive line because their trenches were one of the worst in the league as well, similar to the Bears. They needed help offensively and defensively. And it makes you think, are they going to go tackle at 4? Are they going to go Abdul Carter if he's there? What are the Titans going to end up doing? And then the Tennessee Titans come out and they end up getting their franchise left tackle. They end up getting Dan Moore. Dan Moore was kind of an average offensive lineman. He's a solid starter, but I don't know if he's the franchise left tackle the Titans are paying him to be. They gave him a 4-year, $82 million deal. And that's a very steep deal that they ended up giving him. And I don't know if he's necessarily worth that to the Titans and what they were able to pay him. It's definitely going to be interesting to see if he goes out and performs to the level that they ended up getting him. And another overbuy that ended up happening. The Commanders had one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, and they're trying to compensate for that. And they overpaid on Javon Kinlaw as well, giving him a 3-year deal. And I just think that they overpaid for him as well, kind of similar to the Titans did with Moore. And Javon Kinlaw, he was kind of disappointing with the Jets last year once he ended up going there, and he didn't really have the max effort that a lot of them ended up expecting. And with that, Commanders ended up overpaying him. A lot of Jets fans were shocked by this. They're just trying to be able to replace Jonathan Allen and get someone in place there to be able to kind of step in and fill that Jonathan Allen who they had to cut because they couldn't end up getting a trade target for him. And like we said, the Bears ended up getting Drew Dalman. Drew Dalman is one of the best centers on the market. 3 years, 42 million. They ended up getting him a little bit cheaper than what they thought as well. He actually took a pay cut to go to the Bears, and he turned down more money from other teams because he believed in the Bears, and I think this is a great fit for him. They get a great interior piece, and I think it sets them up very well to either go into the draft to take an edge player, or they're going to end up taking Genty at 10. I think it's definitely leaning towards running back at 10, whether it's Genty or Marion Hampton, or maybe even Tyler Warren at tight end. I think those are really the 3 players that you're looking at number 10 for the Bears at this point to be able to try to set up Ben Johnson for that dominant team that they had. And then one of the first things that broke as well, the last thing we're going to be talking about, is the Buccaneers re-signing Chris Godwin to the 3-year deal. Like I said in my video from yesterday, Chris Godwin, it benefits the Buccaneers to re-sign him to a long-term deal because if they end up letting him walk, they get a lot of dead money on their books, and it's actually cheaper for them to re-sign Chris Godwin than to let him walk into free agency. So that's exactly what they did here. He's one of the best slot receivers in football, and they secured him up for the next 3 years, giving him enough money to be able to complete that core receiving that they ended up having last year that was very good. Him coming off the injury, and then he's going to be able to go into a system that he knows with a lot of the players that he knows. So these are all the free agents and free agent signings I had and my reactions to them with kind of like the overpays and everything like that. Please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agreed or disagree with I talked about in here, and make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel and to keep up with all the future NFL content I'm going to be putting out. And thanks for watching.
Feel like John Moran, need a triple-double. Told him check the stats, yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball, now I never fumble. I'm the MVP, now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Moran, need a triple-double. Told him check the stats, yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop